I'd like to call to order
All right.
the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee meeting of October 18th. It's a special meeting and the time is 11:07. Roll call. James Carrier.
Here.
Ginny Wellman.
Here.
Stephanie Lyle.
Here.
Sue Brayton.
Here.
From staff, we have Dave Rodenbach, our finance director.
Here.
Our interim city clerk, Josh Decker,
Here.
and our tourism director, Laura Pettit.
Here.
And this is Mayor Kuhn.
Yep.
Great.
And Mayor, just let me say, Blue is on this call too. I don't know if he needs to be included, but just, I know I'm not as a voter, but just as for input today. Okay?
Okay. He would be one from the public, I believe.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's
Okay.
just with me, happens to be with me.
Okay. We do, we do have, though we're, I have a lot of respect for Blue but I'm just letting you know that, we don't have two people speak on the behalf of one committee person, just so you know, we can't do that. So,
I think that's just a procedural note. Yeah. Like if Blue called in on a separate line, that would be procedurally correct. Yeah.
correct. We can't have, it's like a double vote. We don't have two people speak on the behalf of a collector or that was established way on with the committee, and all committees are that way too. So just so that council wouldn't even let someone sit in for someone else. And that's not my rules, that's just what council. So just making that clear.
So in order for him to speak today, he has to call in? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he would, because
This is a public meeting, right? I thought these were public. Okay.
he's a public meeting, but he would not be one of the panelists.
Okay, can he ask questions?
It depends. It depends. It's up to the chair of questions on every committee. If there's all sorts of other committees, and it's up to the chair of that committee if they allow questions. It's not that I'm going to deny questions, but it's a committee meeting. And so, I have other committees where people want to go on. And so at one point you have to tell them, sorry, this is actually a committee meeting. So again, I'm just telling you a structure of committee meetings. So, but we've established way before, I wanted people to be able to fill in for another person if they couldn't make it. And
Yeah,
council actually told me that they did not want that allowed. So I'm just following the procedures of the council.
I understand. I was under the assumption though before that he could attend the meetings when we had meetings and he would be there in person. He couldn't vote, but he could, say something. So I didn't see that would be a difference today. So how would he call in? Just asking.
Sue, I think
It's the
he's
Zoom
fine,
login.
to be there with you. He just needs to be acknowledged by the chair before he speaks. So just if he has something he needs to say, just make sure that the mayor acknowledges him first.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And because again, one
And
thing
just
I'm
as a
watchful
procedural
of,
note too, I'm just going to weigh in quickly. For anyone a member of the public who would like to join, if this is a public meeting, they can go to our website. The agenda is posted 24 hours at a minimum in advance, and they can find the Zoom login details there as a webinar attendee, not a panelist. Josh, is that correct?
That's correct.
and one thing I'm very non-biased where I have to be very watchful that, one person doesn't, one receiver or collector doesn't try to have multiple people, more than one, try to, weigh in on a subject that would not be fair to the others. So, okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 12th, the special meeting? Someone?
So procedurally, so do we do the motion and then we discuss? Is that it?
Yes.
Because I had a question
You
about
can't
that.
discuss without a motion.
Oh, this is just a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
It's
the
just-
minutes have the grant application amounts in it.
Correct.
I was just hoping for a clarification on one topic. So I
Yeah.
can make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second Jenny Wellman.
And then now discussion on the minutes of October 12th.
Yeah, so I did have a question on the Crescent Valley Lavender Farm, because there was discussion about whether that was appropriate allocation of funds for operations of a not for a for-profit. So I noticed that that was in that that mix, and I just wanted to make sure that we had some clarification on the table associated with that.
So I can answer that. That would be the guidance that we had from MRSC on what we can approve, not necessarily for something that would improve their property, but for the operation of the event, that is an approved category.
It's not really an event. See, that's my hang up with that, is that it's not really an event. It's like a summer
guess it's-
operations. So that's where,
I viewed it as several in one, so a succession of events from his description. And I think we're okay under none of the applications that we received. We shouldn't be debating the applicability of them. I think we had enough clarification and review in advance to make sure that these were all valid applications and expenses. So as
I would agree.
as far as
That's
I know and have gone through,
That's
Go
a
ahead, Mayor.
city, that's a city direction to make sure that the grants are, follow the guidelines. And as Laura said, she just checked, and even though it's not just one event, it is a series of events.
for example, if it was a capital improvement to their building, yes, that would definitely be out of the, applicability category. But since it's something that attracts people in, it's valid.
yeah, I thought there were just two separate sets of rules for nonprofits versus for-profits in that regard. That was my takeaway from the guy. So that's why, I mean, and I'm not going to take up a bunch of time today to go over that, but I do think that that's a very important clarification that needs to be made for this committee in the future. So,
And I'm happy to put MRSC in touch directly on that question for you,
Okay.
so that you have a little bit further clarification there. As I understand it, for-profits are only, as well as nonprofit, only really applicable for two items, and that was event operations and tourism marketing.
okay, my
Okay.
understanding was that nonprofits could do events or operations, for-profits could only do events. But I will look that up and get some clarification directly on that.
And I'm happy to send that through to you too.
Any other clarifying questions on the minutes? Okay, we've got a motion, we've got a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion passes. Next is the review of the city's 2022 budget application. And with that, I'll turn it over to our Director of Tourism, Laura Cadet.
Hi, everyone. I hope you all received my email over the weekend. Sue answering a little bit more of your questions on what the allocations have been over 2019, 2020, and 2021. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we can walk through a little bit of what the budget represents. And then I also hope that those slides from our geofencing data were helpful as well. I'm also happy to break out individual hotel properties and send those along if needed. Okay,
If you could, Laura, that'd be good. It was a little confusing for me. That's why Blue had more questions on that. So, yeah. So that'd be great.
So we'll go through just a little bit of our pros and cons budget. Looking over the last, if we track exactly as we were in 2020, we are set to have 365,000 in LTAC income this year. That is down 33% from our 2019 numbers, the last normal year of operations. It's up about 100,000 from 2020, which is great, where we saw a 44% decrease year over year from 2019 to 2020. So we've got slight recovery numbers. Obviously, we're not back to where we were. When we look at our expenditures, in 2019, we spent 41% of our lodging tax income. In 2020, we spent 89% of our lodging tax income. And in 2021, initially we had said that the lodging tax income was projected to be $247,000 from our finance department. This, if we are on track, including current numbers to date, plus what we did in September, October, November, and December for 2020, then we'd be sitting right at about 365,000. So that number slightly changes, and we are almost perfectly on track to spend everything other than $20,000 of our lodging tax fund. So we're just over 20,000. So that 156% number does change. Jenny, you have a question?
I do. So where does the 385 lodging tax expenditures come from in terms of the spreadsheet you sent us with the budget? Because that shows.
That was it. Go ahead.
That shows $256,601 as the 2021 projected.
Yeah, that's probably a more accurate number than the 385. So, and again, these numbers have changed just slightly from that Excel sheet. That was kind of an initial run through of the numbers. I've since gone through and made sure that everything is correct. So on this, 2021 changes from 247, which was projected, to a more accurate near, and I think this was in calculating with our June or July numbers. Going through September, we were on track to do about 365. So the lodging tax expenditures are probably around 250. That 385 also included 6 months of a salaried full-time position, which we haven't hired yet. Interviews will be hopefully starting this week. So there are a couple things that changed there. Does that answer your question?
Not really. It would be nice to have the actual numbers in a spreadsheet, but if we're going to be approving.
So I intended to just give you the budget narrative, which has the updated numbers based on my conversations with Tony and Kit. Given that the spreadsheet's not exactly accurate, probably done about a month ago based on numbers that have been updated since. So I intended to just send the narrative for a review, as those numbers are a little bit more forward thinking.
So you must have done an Excel spreadsheet to get to the 365, right? So do you have that you could?
What we have is sure, what finance does for us every month, and we get a detailed trial balance noting what's been spent and what's remaining and what's been taken in from LTAC. So those numbers from finance are where I got the 365 for their projection. I also took a look at 2020's numbers for what we've done, and I anticipate it to be slightly more for October, November, and December, which numbers obviously we don't have yet. So if we stay exactly on track with what 2020 did, we'd get to 365.
So, none of these numbers that are on that expenditures list tie at all to your spreadsheet that you sent, even for 2019 and 2020.
Right.
I just want to point that out because we're going to be approving this budget.
Right, and that's why I didn't want to send that Excel spreadsheet, because those numbers weren't updated. I didn't intend for that to be in front of the committee, but it is right now, and that was included. So I'm more than happy to update that. The narrative that I sent, if you'd like to open that, has a more accurate reflection of the spend per category.
Okay.
And again, noting that too, if we look at that spreadsheet, I calculated initially what 2019's actual versus budget was, and I had shifted those numbers just a year forward. So the 2019 actual and 2020 budget are slightly different. And I'm happy to just send everybody an update right now with those numbers.
It's confusing for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just.
Yeah, I
again,
would
that
prefer
wasn't
to see a
intended-
spreadsheet that has the numbers, because then we can talk about the details, just like we've done every other year. So that's just my input.
No.
Yeah, and again, that wasn't intended to be sent to you, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that was. I'll go ahead and send that. Let me get a little bit further through this PowerPoint, and we can go back to that. And I maybe just screen sharing right now helps a little bit, and I'm not sure. Can you see the Excel sheet?
I don't see a spreadsheet.
It's still only
Okay.
sharing the PowerPoint, Laura.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to that then. All right, and can we see is everyone seeing the visitors data screen right now?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. That's gone too fast. And this is part of the data I sent over the last time in response to Sue's additional questions. So this takes us from December 2017 through present to show our year-over-year numbers. We are down probably about from our peak year-over-year. We are down about, in 2020, we dropped about 30,000 people. We've retained about 10,000 back at that. So our numbers are slightly in recovery. We're not back to 2018, 2019 standard year numbers yet, but we're seeing a bit of recovery. So over the course of this year, just a few of the accomplishments include launching our contract with Datafy and C-Source to inform our digital ad spend so we know who we're targeting and why. We launched our new Visit Gig Harbor Washington site designed in-house for cost savings. We also started redirects from that campaign and our advertising campaign into that site, which also feeds into all of our hotels' booking engines. We also created a meeting site, which our MPI advertising feeds into directly for a little bit more of a targeted ad and a call to action. We launched our Google Ads campaign for further views. We targeted and promoted posts on social media sites. We received press coverage on the destination, and we intend to go further after an earned media campaign this year with the addition of our renegotiated Visit Kits app campaign, which now includes access to a media database. We have our meetings retargeting ads running. We have newsletter content running in AAA Weekends and 1889 magazine. We had our social content development happen. We executed the 2021 Gig Harbor Trolley season, and we did a partial season of Movies in the Park and Summer Sounds. Our goals are to pivot into a highly informed digital marketing campaign, and we are on track to spend $30,000. We are looking to mail our visitors this guide this year into the local 335 and 332 zip codes. We are looking to do a more targeted sponsorship campaign at one time rather than individual asks for individual items at individual times. We're hiring a department assistant. We want to grow the quality of our summer events and really make them something that people can travel for. We are looking into the winter holiday tourism draw and what we can do there, whether we do something like a downtown holiday lights campaign or a ticketed entry ice rink. Those are things that we've looked into, not feasible for this year, but looking at the next year. And we'd like to continue that 125 LTAC grant program to increase the diversity of grant recipients. I think you've all seen this before, the 2020 situation analysis of where funds were spent and how much was allocated for external grants, and that's 22,000. We take a look at 2020, where this is a skewed number as well because there was a inability to fully award that 75,000 in external grants. So we awarded $45,000. We spent the additional amount we weren't able to spend on tourism advertising. We had 1 or 2 contracts that lasted in the beginning phase, but other than that, the majority of our output was spent on our external partnerships, and then also existing contracts that were signed for partnerships and events. So heading into 2021, we have a slightly more balanced spend. We have $30,500 that was allocated toward tourism to directly advertising. You're on track to spend that full amount that was budgeted for. Our admin and DMO costs have dropped, and we are looking at an award of $120,000 for LTAC external grants, which I think we all wanted to see amp up a little bit. So there's that. We do have our capital expenditure in this budget too, which was $100,000 for the Ansich dock, which council approved.
So Laura, just so
Again,
was that you're talking 21 there, right? So, but we don't know what's been granted really, right? Because they haven't been turned in yet. Am I on the right year and the right?
correct.
Okay.
Yes, they have not turned in yet. They have until December 31st to turn in their final amounts. So that amount will likely be lower too, because we know the film festival wasn't able to happen. We know a couple of events were canceled starting in the summer, so that will be modified. I just don't know by how much yet.
Okay.
So, and I think we're all on the same page on our tourism strategy. We're gathering data. We're seeing where we have success in advertising and click-through rates and bookings, and we are continuing our spend in those categories. We are evaluating what we've done and making sure we have efficacy in each market segment that we've identified. And we're fully using our digital tools there, especially as we know that print has seen a little bit of a sink in readership numbers and then also touch points as well. So in a photo that could double as my headshot, questions?
I have a couple questions, as you might guess, right? Always.
So do I. That's okay, Stephanie. You start and then I'll go.
I'll do the easy ones. You do the hard ones too. Okay, so I do have a first question, which is your budget narrative as well as your PowerPoint included the grant program for $125,000. Now, granted, I missed the meeting where there's 25% across the board was, divided out of the LTAC fund. So I'm trying to understand why the LTAC grant program is in the city's request. That's my first question.
And that's the total amount, yeah. And that's fine. I think what I'm hoping to do there is just take a look at how the measurements have put themselves forward. I don't believe, and let me just pull up my Excel sheet too. I don't believe that the LTAC grants are included in that. They're a separate, and that's correct. No, that 490 excludes the 125.
Okay, so then that leads to my second question, which is if 25% is to go to the LTAC grants, and that's 125,000. Technically speaking, if my math is right, that 75% basically goes to the city, which is $375,000. So if that's the case, why is the budget request 490?
So our budget request includes anything we could possibly spend. And that also doesn't include the amount that's underwritten by sponsors for the trolley, for external sponsorships, event sponsorships, any print advertising, anything like that. So essentially that amount that differs, we're looking to make up in external underwriting.
Right,
So
and,
anything I can possibly spend. And go ahead.
Dave, feel to jump in if you need to. I believe we have to show the whole trolley amount. That, the trolley costs $251,000. We don't pay most of it, but we still have to show that money coming out, even though it comes back in, except for $50,000 or so. Is that true, David?
No, it's not. A
Okay.
little bit. I think what you're trying to say is the amount that's covered through fares and through Pierce Transit is not reported. what is reported is the balance that we owe at the end of the year. And I think,
So that's around 50,000.
and even if that
and
money
that's-
comes, even if that 50,000 comes from, let's say, a grant, we still have to authorize the expenditure of it. That's kind of what you were trying to say, Mayor, right?
So
So even though we may be spending exactly 370 something out of our LTAC fund, with the remainder underwritten by external sponsors or grants or donations, we still have to include that amount there. And it's not necessarily committing us to spending all of it, but it is saying this one thing is a possibility or this other thing is a possibility.
So say, for example, you don't get any underwriting and you spend $490,000, where does that other money come from?
Well, that's the decision. If we don't get something, like, let's say we surprisingly had no underwriting for the trolley and it cost us an additional $25,000, that would need, I would say no to another possible expenditure. So all of these possibilities are related to each other. If we're getting zero funding from anyone anywhere, then we're going to have to eat that $25,000 for the trolley and cut back some of our other projects to make sure that we're still in line with that amount that we'd like to spend.
Mhm. Okay.
I guess I'm confused.
And that's never going
because
to be.
I just feel like we
Go
haven't
ahead.
done it that way before, Dave, and maybe we've only shown what we contributed to the trolley. We didn't show the grants in what we were looking at. So it's just a different way of doing it. And nor did we show the sponsors, for the events that you're talking about. So
I think before, the trolley was reported in the general fund under parks, and the tourism came in through that way. I don't know if it was in kind or through contributions and whatnot. And it was decided to put the whole program in the lodging fund. And
when
so,
was that decided? Oh, the whole.
and I think what you said before was what I heard before was if we were expecting contributions for let's say the trolley at $50,000 is what we expect and what we're budgeting. If we don't get any coverage for that from outside sources, then who pays for it is the beginning fund balance or the revenues of the lodging tax fund. And I think was the first thing you wanted to get to. And then secondly, think of it in terms of, as far as the simplified way to do it, the summer sounds. Those revenues used to be reported in the general fund. Those are going to now be reported in the lodging fund. And that will cover the expenses of the lodging fund and the summer sounds. Anything left over from that, guess what? It becomes a lodging tax dollar and it stays in the lodging fund. So it kind of goes both ways and how these things get funded.
Yeah, I know a couple of years ago, we had a conversation about summer sounds, for example, as more of a resident enrichment program, basically, or a parks program, as opposed to something that was designed to attract tourists. I mean, obviously we have 3,000 people or whoever gathered on the grass at any point, but and so it is a draw. It's a really cool program, but I know that there is some concern about spending a lot of lodging tax on it when it could go through, in theory, the park department or as a programming for the parks. But I personally don't have any problem funding the trolley with LTAC. I think it's a really good service. So I think, but I also noticed on the other spreadsheet that in past years, summer sounds funding from LTAC was around 25,000. And this year it looks like it's 70,000. So we need to consider that major increase in cost as well.
I'm happy to explain that. So what I'd like to do is pursue event sponsorships a little bit more aggressively in order to grow the quality of the events and make them where they do come into the tourism budget. It's a great story for our earned media campaigns. It's a great way to attract people and say, this is what you can do in Gig Harbor in the summer. It tells a story about who we are as a city and what we can do and what people can do when they come down here. So from that point, we can keep that at $30,000 and just do the same old thing. We've always had a bit underwritten by sponsors, like $2,500 or maybe $5,000. I'm increasing our ask from some of the sponsors that have been involved in the past. I want to increase the quality of the event. I want to increase the ability to get maybe bigger bands and have that be more of a regional draw. So that again is our pie in the sky hopeful number. And that includes whatever sponsorships we can attain for that. So when we put together these things, it's a little bit of a dream budget and saying, gee, I really hope this happens. If it doesn't, we're fine with spending the normal amount. And if we only get $5,000 in sponsorships, then so be it. The event production kind of scales to what we receive there.
Yeah, I would agree, though. I can't see spending that much on Summer Sounds when it's just,
Well, it's not just Summer Sounds, it's the movies in the park, it's Summer Sounds, it's a new holiday event, and also whatever else we can do there to increase, I think, events in the off season, which would include something like the ice rink. So those are pie in the sky ideas.
And I'd like to mention that, a lot of the grants that we get are the same type of things that the city's doing. We just approved the art festival because it's great. Well, a lot of those people are just here. We also, the farmers market. I mean, I've been at the Summer Sounds, I've been at the movie nights over the years. I know people that come from outlying areas outside of the greater Gig Harbor that come from other areas. When we were going to have the band from Canada, I knew a lot of people that were coming down from Seattle for that band. So there's a lot of boats too. So it's no different than a lot of the things that we do. Part of it's local, part of it's not, but it funds tourism on the greater part, which awareness also brings more people to our area. One thing that we were talking about is if you type in within 2 hours of Seattle, places to go. 4 years ago, Seattle wasn't on the list. I think they are now. But the point is, if there's a lot of things going on, then it shows up on different sites as places to go.
I understand.
It increases our.
We need off-season draws too. And so funding Summer Sounds, movies in the park, and just more and more. I feel like it just gets more and more every year. And if we're going to get sponsors, that's a huge, and as you know, Laura, we talked about this before too. Getting out and getting sponsors that takes time, a lot of time. And people are not so willing to do sponsorships right now. We've all been through, at least most businesses. There's some that have done great, but we're still recovering. So I would just be more comfortable leaving it the way it was and not increasing it at this time. So that's my vote, my 2 cents. Okay.
I will say I already have 1 or 2 confirmed, not confirmed, but they're in contract for sponsorships. And they are people that we've worked with on a consistent basis that have seen the return from our events. So there's opportunity there. And I prefer to keep a ambitious outlook and try for it. And if it doesn't work, we can scale back. And that's what all of these categories are designed to do. It gives us the opportunity to do something big if we get the funding for it. It doesn't commit us to it, but it gives us the opportunity.
Also puts us at risk of having to then fund the whole thing. I'm just saying, what did
Well,
we get
again, I mean, part of
last year? Just what did we get last year?
what did we give last year?
What did we get for
Or
sponsors?
what did we get? We had a $20,000 sponsorship from Virginia Mason Franciscan Health for both movies and in the park. So, and in past years, it had been $6,000.
Okay.
So, and that's also not included in our final budget amount as well. Those amounts and the trolley donations, which I think we have $20,000 in signed donation agreements, those have not been received yet and input into the LTAC budget. So those have been a little bit more successful. We set up last year.
Are you
We
responsible
intend to
for
continue setting that up.
the donations though? Are you responsible for following up on the donations on the trolley, for instance? It used to be, I don't remember. So is that your responsibility now to like from the chamber and
Well,
the,
right now, yeah. Yep. And those are standard within the stops that have agreed, the places that have agreed to be stopped on the trolley. So for right now, yes. Will that be something that maybe shifts later? Sure. Will that be something that maybe our assistant position covers each year and follows up on? Perhaps. We have opportunities in how we approach that. But right now, yeah, I'm a one-man band. So
And I don't know what it was before 2018, but since 2018, the pledges were the responsibility of the tourism to collect those. So.
Yeah, they weren't before. Yeah. Okay. So that's just one more thing. I'm just saying, it's a lot of time. Mhm.
Yeah, and that's why we have an assistant position coming in to address some of the administrative support work.
It seems if the funds are there, they should just be spent, because, well, from the nonprofit point of view, that also has to go out and seek sponsors and all of that, competing with the city is really difficult. We have more nonprofits than we've
And
ever had, and everybody is looking for sponsorships. So that seems like if the funds are there, just pay for it and be done with it, and not really worry about spending a bunch of time trying to get sponsors. So, but that's just my little horn that I like to toot every once in a while.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and understood. We're not competing with you. I mean, in any capacity, even when we look at, a third party going out for advertising dollars for the visitor's guide, that would essentially be a competition as well. So in my mind, they're two very separate things, and giving to the Harbor History Museum is very, very different and sees a very different audience in return than it would place an ad, for example, in the visitor's guide. So it's apples and oranges for me. I agree with you, though, that our goal has been to spend some of this fund, not to just sit on it. So that is some of the reason behind the heightened ask and increase. And it is important to note this is only a $10,000 increase over last year's ask. So we intend to spend it. We want to spend it in good ways. We want to see it spent in ways that are measured, which is the whole purpose of our geofencing campaign and our contract through the Washington Hospitality Association with Data by C-Source. We want to make sure that we have the numbers that say, this is how many people are coming here based on this exact experience. So we have a data fence drawn around Scanzi Park for things like the movies, and we can tell who comes in. We can tell who comes to movies in the park or an ice rink. And then there's also the secondary purpose of this too, which is increased lodging tax, also the side benefit of increasing sales tax revenue as well. So we have our multi-scaled, value proposition.
I also think that pledges, even if it takes a little time, it brings ownership to the group. For instance, if Heron's Key pledges $5,000 towards the trolley, they're going to tell their people to go use the trolley, to go to the farmer's market. If the hospital spends $5,000 for sponsoring a concert, they're going to tell people at the hospital. They're going to bring awareness. They've got some stake in the game, and I think that will widen the knowledge of the event. Think about it. If you're the hospital and you're going to tell or the Heron's Key and you're going to spend money, you're going to promote it within. So,
Yeah, I think Laura is doing a good job of casting a wide net here, and the geofencing, the SEO stuff, that will pay off. It's just a different methodology than what's been used here in the past. But I think you need to shed the analog approach that we've had and embrace this new digital approach. It'll pay off.
Right, and
I'm a data gal. I like numbers.
I pointed this out before. I know a lot of our receivers are eager for funds and grants, but your goal for sitting on this committee is to bring tourism to all of Gig Harbor. And you have to please keep that in mind. It's still to promote your nonprofit, but it is to promote tourism as a whole. And that's so.
And one of our main goals has always been off-season. We need business,
Right.
November through May, okay?
And we totally agree with you.
One of our total goals. So for me, just throwing money at summer things does not sit well. We don't need people then.
And you're totally right, Sue. You really are. And that's one thing, forget the name now, over by Chelan. There's their winter festival. I mean, it brings a lot of people now. And Ocean Shores, or not Ocean Shores, Cannon Beach did a winter thing, and we are working on it. And she's trying to work on this ice rink thing. So I totally agree with you. That's where we need to start working more on.
We have a funky year. We've had a funky 2 years, and it has been really, really difficult. There's a lot of ideas that are going to be able to be functionable as we move forward. I think we have the potential to do something like a Gig Harbor Food and Wine Festival in the fall or early winter. I think there are opportunities to do bigger things. I think there are more opportunities to grow not only our occupancy, but your average daily rate too. And I think that I can understand the viewpoint that a summer event doesn't necessarily bring you more business, but I think it increases demand. And I think that's why we've drawn these data fences too, to say, is this driving business? Is this driving numbers year over year? Is this helping? And I think a little bit of our recovery from 2020, where our numbers were the lowest, shows that this is slightly working. We're still in an environment that is not conducive to the business travel levels or the leisure travel levels that we've seen in the past. So we need to be cognizant of that. But yes, we also need to be creative in the ways that we go about things while still operating under the guidelines that, like them or not, are there from the health department, the state, and everything else that we do. So there's opportunity. What I want to see us do right now is not slow our spend because we're in a dip, but go aggressively after those regional tourists that they may not be going to Hong Kong. They may not be going to, Europe this year, but people are starting to travel a little bit and explore in their backyards a little bit more. Part of our digital marketing campaign is specifically aiming at Seattle guests who have not explored in the region. And we're competing there. We're competing with Port Townsend. We're competing with Anacortes. We're competing with other small towns that have similar amenities, but we need to tell our story in a way that differentiates us in a little bit of a different way. And I think that's something that the concerts do. That's something that we have the opportunity to do with fall and winter events. I think that's also been part of our strategy and what we funded through LTAP grants too. Is this a need period? Does this event occur in an area where we don't have any other draws? Do we have a Shamrock Run and a Celtic Music Festival in March? Because there's not a whole lot of business in March, sure. And I think that's why we gave those funds there too. So that's a targeted idea. I don't think the city can do all of the events that happen in the off season. I think that's better funded through our relationships with nonprofits and for-profit businesses that choose to throw events. But I do think that funding some of our standards and some of the things that tell our story as who Gig Harbor is and differentiate us from other locations are important.
Okay, let's get back to the budget. Unless there's other questions on the budget?
Why was
You can't tell, but I was pointing to you.
Why was the decision made to distribute the visitor's guide to everybody in Gig Harbor and spend $20,000 to do that?
So that's something that will be underwritten. The decision was made to do that because we don't have an active distribution plan right now. We've long said that our citizens are our best publicists. They're the people that go out and say, hey, you should come into town this weekend. Hey, we'll book a block of rooms and everyone will have a big party here. Hey, let's do this for Summer Sounds or the Paddler's Cup. They're people who are actively engaged in their communities and go out and bring people in. And we think that that's a huge benefit. I think a sales pitch for the Gig Harbor Film Festival from someone who's attended and says, come down, we'll have dinner together, get a broom, do this. That's far more effective for me than seeing an advertisement in a magazine. So the idea is there to let people know in advance, rather than sending it out in the summer, give people the time in order to know what's going on through the year, plan and invite people out, and also make sure that we're not just serving, ourselves. We're not just saying, pick it up if you'd like to, but we're distributing on, ferries and in airports, and also sending out to the people that will be our active voices. And I don't know if you've experienced this in Gig Harbor, but for me, it's always been true. I find out about things when people tell me and share that information. And I know a good amount of that is a neural network of people who talk about things that they're excited about and pitch that on our behalf. So our citizens are our best publicists, and I think they'll continue to be. And again, that's an amount that will be underwritten. So that's not necessarily a cost that we're taking on ourselves. That's a cost that we intend to have underwritten by sponsorships and donations.
Just a question on that, because this year, I know you weren't happy with the guide and the way it was done and all of that, but did we have any costs besides your time?
No, but here's where that is a problem. The distribution wasn't anywhere but a list of places throughout Gig Harbor. Typically, when we have a contract, what we do is we have the producer agree to let us have creative control, make sure that the content is correct, make sure that it fits our marketing objectives and is distributed in the places we need to have it distributed. So we also agree on an amount that's printed. We agree on a good amount of other things that we didn't get this year. And it's not just my personal feeling about it, but it is, how do we accomplish our marketing objectives? And the idea to mail it out to residents happened far before any 2021 contract. So
Yeah,
that's been on the plate for a while.
There was never a charge though, because it was always mailed out in the gateway. The gateway printed it, it was in there. So we weren't paying.
Yeah. What we've done is essentially they would cover the cost, but they would also sell the advertising and they would make a profit off of it. What we do is just ship that model in-house.
You're going to sell the advertising?
Not me personally, no.
Who? I guess I'm confused. How would that look?
I think we'll probably look at a third-party contractor to do that.
Okay, because I know you guys talked about that last year pursuing, I think there was a couple of companies. I just can't see spending that kind of money and then mailing. Is that 70,000 or is the 20 part of it 50? I can't remember.
It's 60,000 in total for mailing, printing, and content development. And that's still with us producing all of the, and this is what happened in years past. Essentially, we would produce all the content. Someone else would go out and put that content into a template and then sell advertising and create a profit from it, which usually would work fine if it was meeting our marketing objectives. But since we didn't have a contract last year, we weren't able to have any input in that. So in order to, go ahead.
That money also doesn't take the money we would take in from revenue of the ads, correct?
Right, and that's what essentially sponsorship dollars would look like. So instead of selling an ad and just saying you get an ad in a paper, perhaps it's that you get to be able to present one of the concerts at Summer Sound and be the sponsor for that event, plus an ad in a visitor's guide, plus something in our, sponsoring one of the weekly Gigabyte newsletters. So it's a more holistic approach to what you get when you work with the city, a more holistic approach to what audience you reach in a multi-platform way.
Right. I also might say we had more guides, and then because they gave us more than they intended, and then they picked them up, and then they wouldn't give us any more. And so we don't really have guides to send organizations that want us to. Also, if they would only list a restaurant in an editorial if they paid money. And I totally believe that that's not, if you want to do editorials, it should not be tied into, you have to pay us to list your retail store or your restaurant, or we're not gonna write the editorial with your name in. I don't agree with that. It did not go on any ferries. It was completely out of our control, and it was we suffered greatly for it.
Okay, and Mayor, Laura and I have talked many a time, and I've talked to Julie about it, and Julie is more than happy to work with you guys. I'm not sure where it broke down. Find us. Okay, let's just
I've talked to the owner. The owner went back on his word multiple times. The owner of Gig Harbor Local went back on his word multiple times. I will be gone, but I have nothing to do with that person that I wouldn't even call a gentleman.
Okay, well, I've not talked to Steve.
I will say this, and Sue, I understand your viewpoint here, but as an advisory committee member, it is not appropriate to speak on behalf of this committee in total or the decisions that the department head makes. It put us in an awkward position, and Julie is great. I really like her. I don't begrudge them any of their ad sales or any of their content. I like working with her, but we did not get what we needed out of that relationship. And we want to make sure that that is something that benefits what our end goals are. If we had made a decision all together as a committee to go ahead and do the visitor's guide through them, that would have been fine. However, that wasn't a discussion that anybody had. That was had in a public meeting, in a committee setting, that was had one-on-one, and that conversation is not appropriate. In my view, it really set us on a different path. we want to make sure that we have a good relationship with Living Local. And I think that put us in a really difficult position. I understand that there's still a want for a guide, but I also have a hard time justifying going out in the 2020-2021 season and asking restaurants to pay for advertising to be listed in a list of restaurants. And that's been something that we've contracted in years past. There's been a cap rate that they can ask for advertising for businesses. And there's been a clear delineation between editorial and advertorial. So for me, those things are really, really important for our local community. We are a great destination because we are a sum of our parts. And in a hard year, I find it difficult to have one company creating a profit off asking other people if they want to be featured, and also doing it prior to any conversation with the city in our name. And that's hard for me to stomach too.
And I also want to clear.
And I understand the need for it.
Point, and please take this in content. Your job is not to tell our staff who to pick and who to run. That's not your job. LTAC is not here. It's to advise on budgetary things. It's not to tell our tourism director who she should and should not do, or actually how to do things. She's employed by the city, and that's not your position. So, and I've had a little bit. I've had it a little bit with some of the group telling my staff how to do their job and what to do, or actually going outside of this group and representing the city on the city's behalf without a city person there. And you're not the only group that does it, just so you know. Committees love to do it. Advisory committees love to go outside and represent the city, but that's not their role. And they will eventually get in trouble by doing so, because the city, they have no legal representation of the city.
Can I just say something really quick? I was not saying we have to use them. I'm saying I am opposed to spending that much money to publish a visitor's guide when we could do it without spending that kind of money. Whoever you
It's
use.
not free. Someone is making a profit off of it, and there's always an amount that's underwritten. So it's never free. It's just taking that process in-house and taking ownership of it.
And it doesn't
And we
show
can
the money
probably
we
do it
will
for a
get.
way more competitive rate than a third party would.
Right, and Laura, that doesn't show the money that we potentially will get back from selling the ads. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
Can we move on,
Any
please?
thoughts?
This is taking a lot of time to kind of bicker back and forth, and honestly, I'd rather get on with the approval of the budget if possible.
Absolutely.
Josh,
Yeah, I just want to make a clarification. I think that this might be a point of some confusion, but the request that Laura submitted for LTAC, that's a gross amount. An LTAC request should be made in a net amount. So the mayor and Laura have said repeatedly that they're going to spend $250,000 for admin and DMO costs. So anything that they want to spend above that amount should be something that they think they can recoup. So LTAC's recommendation should be to finance that they can draw down the LTAC fund by $250,000. And then if Laura has other ideas for expanded concerts or anything like that, her ability to do that will have to be based on how much she can bring back in.
Yes.
So I think
absolutely.
that 490,000 should not be your recommendation. That's kind of a misleading thing. It would be like if the Harbor History Museum came with you with their entire budget and said, this is it, but we're not going to ask for that much. It needs to be the net amount, the grand total maximum amount that they
Maybe-
can withdraw.
So can I get back
Maybe
to
Dave can
what
clarify.
are we approving here? I really don't understand what we're approving. Are we
Yeah.
approving 490,000 or some other number?
that's
No.
what we're trying to figure out. Dave,
Okay,
can you
thank
weigh
you.
in on that?
Sorry, who?
Our finance director. So
Dave,
we're
our
gonna-
finance
We're gonna
director.
get clarity on that, on what Josh said. So Dave, are you there? I'm gonna call his extension, just.
But while we're waiting with Dave too, I can explain a little bit more. We don't really, the budget that Laura's provided is really granular. It has a lot of ideas that she has in it. Those are not things
And
that
that's
are
not
locked into by our LTAC's recommendation. LTAC's recommendation is going to be very general. It's going to be the city is authorized to spend X amount of dollars for operations, marketing, and capital improvements. It's the same as what the recommendation would be for any other of the grant applicants. Like the film festival, we say the film festival gets X amount of dollars for marketing and operations. We don't say that they have to print flyers and send them to a certain group of people. It's very broad and open-ended, and that's how the contracts are, and that's how the council award is made. So, and while I know Laura appreciates all the input from this group, and we meet throughout the year to keep getting that input, it's not really part of this discussion today. This discussion is just to set that large final dollar amount that we can spend in 2022.
So, and Dave maybe can clarify this a little bit more, but the idea of the 25% in each sector would essentially give the city about $375,000 plus the amount that we were able to raise via sponsorships and donation awards. So that's where 491 comes from. It's not a huge departure from last year, which I applied the same standard last year for asking for 481,000 in total, minus other expenses. So
Dave,
I think maybe.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Go
Dave,
ahead,
you came in late on this. Josh had some comments, and then Laura talked, and I need you to hear them both and then weigh in on this.
Yeah, Dave, so basically what I've explained to the committee is that they need to have their recommendation be the net amount that the city is going to draw down the LTAC fund, not the gross amount of the entire tourism budget. So when we go to council with the resolution, council is going to authorize the city to draw down the lodging tax amount, the lodging tax budget by X amount of dollars. And if we want to go over that amount, then that needs to be recouped by costs that we bring in from donations and other mechanisms.
That makes sense. Yes. So, but what,
Okay.
what I want to make
All right,
clear
I
is
can
that
revise that.
the budget, the public budget that's going to be read November 8th won't reflect that resolution.
Right, the resolution comes
correct.
after the budget. Yep.
Correct. Okay. Just so we have our expectations. The budget's going to be larger and encompass stuff that's not part of the resolution. And the resolution will be what draws down actual beginning fund balance, if you will.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Dave, I need you to help figure out what we're supposed to approve with Laura today.
My understanding, no, I want everybody to know I'm not in the details, and I don't understand the details of what's in front of you at the moment. But what I'm looking at when I'm hearing all this is the preliminary budget. What you're going to see in the preliminary budget is the June estimate of revenues. It's going to stay for year end at 295. And the reason I do that, just so everybody knows, I could be updating every revenue source up until the end of November. And we just don't have the time to do that. And so the prudent way to budget is if we're budgeting at 295 and we get 400, that's fabulous. We can come in next year and amend the budget if we need to. And that's just crossing our T's, dotting our I's, and going, easy to do. So we don't have to go all the way out there. So that's one difference you may see in what Laura's told you. And secondarily to that, I do agree with Laura's assessment that we'll probably easily be at 365, maybe more. The preliminary number I came out with was almost 400. Okay, so we'll see how that goes. I don't really put a lot of time analyzing that difference at this point because of what I said before about being prudent in our budgeting. Now, onto the expenditures, it's pretty much right in the ballpark of what the city's done in the past. And so my understanding of what the committee needs to approve is what the city is actually going to commit in lodging tax funds. So that would be, as I understand it now, the administrative program, which would include Laura and her assistant. And then one thing I wanted to throw in that I'm not sure everybody understands, all the salary and benefit costs are 50% funded by the general fund. Okay, so when Laura bleeds into general fund functions and time spent doing things, that's a good thing, because if she was 80% general fund, yet we were paying 50% or with lodging, that would be a problem. Okay, so just remember that. And so the personnel program, I guess, is increasing by 0.4 of an FTE in dollars, which would really be 0.2 if you split it 50-50 with administration. And what supports a staff member, that's all that stuff goes into administration. Then you have tourism advertising in general. And I know you break it out differently in the way Laura talks. I don't understand that language quite, but it falls under advertising. You're going to see trolley, but you only have to approve the 50,000. And that's kind of a contingency. You're going to hope it's going to be less, but the city's going to be left holding the bag on something on that. And then anything capital. And that's what you have to recommend to council. And then should council approve it, then we're off and running.
When you said 50, did you say 50,000 or 50%?
I thought the trolley was 50,000.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's what we estimated. It was 42,000 last year. We estimate up for a year-over-year expense.
So what would
And
that,
that's fuel from first transit with everything.
so then what is the dollar amount we're approving?
The dollar amount would essentially be that 75%, so 375,000 plus whatever sponsorship funds that we can raise.
Okay. Stephanie,
Yes, I have two questions. I did not see any capital expenditures listed in this budget. Is that correct?
There's one capital.
We had the
expenditure.
100,000.
There's one for replacement signs for 10,000.
Oh, right. Okay.
So that 125,000 should not be included in the city's ask, except for that 10,000.
So
Okay.
essentially what we did when we said that we have that 4-quadrant structure is some years we may have a $250,000 ask for capital expenditure, some years we may not. The idea is to make sure there's some kind of equal spend in those 4 quadrants. In the long-term perspective, do we cut down something in another year, or do we have that $125,000 there that's allocated and we spend, $1 million every 4 years on something? To me, that's what that fund represents. It's not necessarily a tight and fast amount, but it's designed to guide us to make sure that we're not overlooking one category entirely.
Okay. I know that there was some conversation about the Scansy Net Shed getting a new roof and a couple other things, and I didn't know where that fell in the budget, but probably the mayor and Dave could answer that, and it can be an aside, but I do understand that can qualify for LTAC spending because it is a city-owned property. And I just want to make sure that that building gets taken care of because it's a really important building to our city. So,
Right.
And it is a big draw, certainly. My second comment is I still feel very strongly that the total ask, no matter whether it is supplemented or not, should not exceed $375,000 from the city for a variety of reasons. And if I'm going to approve something, I'm not going to approve anything beyond $375,000.
right, what is the ask now, Laura?
The total ask that we put in the budget was $491,000. So, and that's anticipating any possible expense. That's anticipating the trolley expense. So Stephanie, if you say you won't approve anything over 375, essentially we're always going to have to be slightly over that with the amounts that we have underwritten. So if I say, I'm putting $50,000 in there, that takes me down another $25,000 that I can't really spend.
Right, but just
And what I've
keep
heard,
in mind that the last 2 years, the city has underspent. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. But I just want to make sure that we're not continually, like my Comcast bill, continually going up and up and up, when you've already stated very clearly that it should be a 25%. If we've approved $125,000 for a grant program, and that's supposed to be 25% of said LTAC budget, then I don't think we can really go beyond that. So I feel strongly about that. And I think also doing the math, that means if you were going to do $490,000 and your baseline was 375, you'd have to raise an additional $116,000 to supplement that budget. That's a lot. That is a lot.
I think we're on track for that.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that I support
will say
all
Stephanie-
your efforts. I just think that we need to be very realistic about our expectations.
Yep. And I will say, so by the numbers, What we spent in 2019 was 41% of our lodging tax income. Last year in 2020, we spent 89% of our year-on-year lodging tax income. And for 2021, we're scheduled to spend, I think, 114% of our lodging tax income. This budget was at that 116,000 in extra funding. It would represent just over 100% of what we make in the year for the year. And I know that has been a long-term concern of why don't we spend everything that we bring in? We are actively trying to do that and get more of a ROI on what our spend is, and then measure it to see, hey, do we need to keep doing movies in the park if that's not a huge draw for tourism? And those are things that I'm open to. If something is showing that it's not performing, we can cut. We can always go back and edit and say, we don't think this is a appropriate expense and we think it can be better spent elsewhere. Whether that's, contributing to more digital advertising if we see results there, or contributing to, in-person events in the fall and winter. So that's the feedback that I've heard from a long time. We want to spend what we make in the year for the year. Why is there so much going to a reserve? And that is something that we've corrected both in 2020 and 2021. Obviously, it's been a different scenario in 2021 and 2020, but we're hearing you, we're listening, we're trying to respond in kind and make sure that those dollars are out there doing what they're supposed to.
Right, and we all know that we tried to spend a lot more this year than we were able to. And we had to cancel a lot of things, as everyone knows. So that's outside, and every other places did too. So that was outside of our control. I do have like 4 hours of meetings after this, and I got just a little bit of time to have breakfast and lunch. So I'd like to get this done. So between Dave and Josh and Laura, what amount are we approving?
I think, Josh, it's the amount that we draw down the LTAC budget, correct? So that'd be 375. And Dave, if I'm right, when I present to council as part of our overall budget, I present the $491,000, but we may not be able to spend that 116 if we don't receive it, correct?
I think that's correct. It just, the 375 depends on if we're gonna stick with our plan of saving money for capital projects or not, because 125,000 of that is supposed to be for capital. So if we want to spend the full 375 on marketing, we have that option. It just is not the plan we started with.
And again, that number, I mean, we'll figure that out. I view that as more of a overall guide rather than an exacting amount that we need to stick to each year. I think if we have a project that's for 160 or 170 next year, we can take a look at that too under a capital projects versus advertising, marketing, DMO expenses, or capital improvements and structures. And I want to make sure I'm remembering all of those.
Okay, Ginny.
Because I think there might be a challenge as the budget is calculated and in the categories that I see every year. I want to make sure that I understand, and maybe Dave, I can walk through with you on this later, what each category correlates to there's four pillars. So I want to make sure that's correct. But overall, I think we're on the right track.
Ginny.
So may I ask, what does it look like? What does the budget look like when you propose it to City Council? Does it look like this spreadsheet you just sent us?
It looks like the narrative that will be involved, that will be presented, I think, Dave, online as well for the public. It looks like the overall amounts.
This is what council actually approves for LTAC. It's a resolution, and it lists the amount that we are authorized to allocate to each body. And actually, this is the amendment. Let me pull up this is the amended one we did for the additional LTAC grants. Let me pull up the correct one.
So the reason I'm asking is that, I want to see, so when I add up the numbers in this narrative, it comes to 407,000 plus 125 plus 125. So I don't know if I add up the spreadsheet, it comes to 432. So I have no idea what we're going to be voting on to propose to give to City Council. I just want to make that point. And I would like to move this meeting on as fast as we can because we're already over.
So Jenny, let me just point out on the thing that I have pulled up here, you can see the final line is for City of Gig Harbor. This is what council will actually approve. It just says City of Gig Harbor operational event and destination marketing, 400,000, or in this case, 375 or whatever amount you decide on. So
thank you.
We are not getting granular at all. It's very broad. And we'll have discussions throughout the year on how that gets spent.
And again, I want to apologize that Excel spreadsheet was not updated and was not intended to be what we went through today. So that narrative is the most updated and to date.
But again, the narrative even doesn't add up to 490,000. I just want to point that out. So I'm done. Thanks.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the 375 of the city's portion of the LTAC?
Motion to approve.
Okay, I'll second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed. It's too confusing. Thank you.
Abstain? Okay, motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1. Okay. Any other further comments? We will try to get more clarity. I'm not, I understand frustrations with people. It is confusing. Again, it's 50%. A lot of the wages are 50% of, and then general fund pays the other 50%. That way, tourism is working for tourism. And when Laura or her assistant works for the city, they're not spending tourism dollars on doing that. So we will try to get you as much clarity as possible. We understand that it is frustrating.
And again, I apologize. The Excel sheet should not have been public discussion. That was just a workbook for me to generally throw things in as they came at me. The narrative should be what we're talking about, and I will, Jenny, shoot you over an updated narrative too, and make sure that those numbers correlate.
Thank you.
Okay, any closing comments? All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great day. And we'll send you over more information for it to be more descriptive and with more clarity. And then you can always reach out to Laura to get more information if you have questions.
I'm always
Okay.
here.
Meeting, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second,
I second.
all those in favor say aye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.